automaton. Ground control to Major Tom. Commencing contact.
I found a lot of things odd and kind of strange and surprising recently because I actually started looking up. I started looking at the daytime sky, started looking at the clouds and how different they can be from one day to the next. I looked at planes flying across the blue sky. I looked at the sun behind the clouds. I looked at the clouds floating across the sky, and I started paying attention to the moon in the daytime, in the nighttime. I started looking at the moon's different phases, its different colors, and my interest in the sky and my studies, they led me to look into the missions in outer space. First, I looked into the Apollo missions to the moon. Then I wondered why we hadn't been back to the moon, because we went to the moon 9 times and sent 12 men during the Apollo missions from December of 1968 to December of 1972.
Nothing has happened since 1972. It's been just over 45 years, and that's a lot of time to be stagnant after 6 back-to-back moon landings. Get this, not only did NASA lose the telemetry data for all the moon landings, but NASA now claims that they lost the technology that got them to the moon in the first place.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
This is why we can't go past low Earth orbit, according to them.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit.
Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
And this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit.
Then I found out about the Van Allen radiation belt. Here's what a NASA engineer has to say about the Van Allen radiation belt.
We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
This radiation belt was present for the Apollo missions, so how did they manage to make it through? Let's ask Apollo astronaut Alan Bean.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No. Now, I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did.
Beginning at an altitude of 1,000 miles and extending an additional 25,000 miles, lay lethal bands of radiation called the Van Allen radiation belts. Every space mission in history with humans on board, from both the United States and Soviet Union, from the first in 1961 to the present, has been well below this deadly radiation field. Mercury, Gemini, Soyuz, Skylab, the Space Shuttle, all maintained altitudes well below 1,000 miles. All except Apollo.
I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
Then we went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
Didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation.
So you see, Team Apollo didn't know about this deadly radiation belt that would have killed them, so they weren't affected by it.
Everyone seems to be okay with not going back, and that's despite the original video of our first ever moonwalks during the Apollo 11 mission being destroyed. But I guess it doesn't really matter either way, since we destroyed the technology to get back to the moon. That's if you believe what Don Pettit said. So my curiosity compelled me to keep researching all of this stuff, and a lot of what I found, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, why does it look like this flag is flapping or blowing in the wind. And this module taking off looks pretty weird to me. So yes, a lot of the moon landings and stuff surrounding outer space can come across as odd. And yeah, maybe each odd thing can be explained away. It's just that when I look at all of the oddities as a whole, it's a bit creepy. And I say creepy because someone I know and someone I love once said this stuff was creepy when they started looking into it. And all of this creepy stuff made me want to keep researching and keep asking questions. But I ended up asking one question that can get you labeled as a nutcase. It's a question that makes people laugh at you. It's a question that I bet you've already seen coming as you've been watching this video. And that question is, did we really go to the moon?
I'm sorry, Jay. I'm sorry.
I could see that how that would affect your Christmas.
I made that whole thing up.
What?
I'm sorry. I guess I just wanted to seem interesting. I guess there's a real danger of that on this show.
There's a pressure.
Well, yeah, people come out and they've run out of anecdotes, you know, and they just start making stuff up.
Yeah.
Like that Neil Armstrong guy. Have you seen him on the talk shows?
Neil Armstrong, you mean the first man to walk on the moon?
Talk about a fish story. Man, and they're buying it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yep, we all know that people get labeled crazy or get called conspiracy theorists for questioning the Apollo missions or if we ever went to the moon. But please stay with me here, okay? I promise that I've really given this a lot of thought.
These two laughable Apollo photographs that destroyed the NASA moon landings forever for me. I certainly didn't see these photographs on Phil Plate's website or on the Mythbusters. This here is the official lunar lander. When I usually show this to people, they automatically think it's a joke. No, seriously, this is an official photograph of the Apollo lunar lander. Fortunately, they took a close-up photograph as well. Curtain rods, aluminum foil, tar paper, scotch tape, some useless abstract art sculptures that do nothing but look spacey, and some very poor construction. Look at the paneling. It's a disaster. If someone sheetrocked your basement like this, you'd demand your money back. But this is supposed to be an amazing spaceship constructed by the best engineers and scientists. It's absolute garbage. A shameful prop made by a high school drama club. Looking at the photographs side by side, it's unbelievable to me that they got away with this for so long.
This is Gemini 4 that was completed in June of 1965. That was well before the Apollo 11 mission. This is the first American spacewalk recorded using an 18mm lens camera, and it recorded at 6 frames per second. But straight up, this looks like stop motion video to me. Back to what's odd. And it's that I can't find any other video of astronauts turning their helmets. A turning helmet appears to be only happening during this first ever spacewalk. Because the thing is that my research showed that the helmets couldn't turn or swivel because they're fixed to an airtight ring base. And once the suit is pressurized, it all becomes extremely stiff. And I don't see the helmet turning again in any of the video for this spacewalk or any others.
I especially love this Apollo 11 redocking footage. This is absolutely ridiculous. These are 1960s special effects and are obviously fake to even a child. Look at the jerky motions. Look at the total lack of thrusters being used. I've had many people ask me if this is genuine NASA footage, and yes, it is. I actually feel pretty bad for you if you believe that's a spaceship that just blasted off from the moon traveling at 4,000 miles per hour.
But there's a lot of footage available that's been taken from the International Space Station, the ISS. This is it here. Of course, a lot of live interviews and videos have been done and recorded from the ISS, and that's resulted in a lot of footage to look at. First, and this one's just kind of really funny to me, it turns out that there's a lot of weird looking hair on the space station. It's like the hair is gelled or hairsprayed up, like straight up, and it's not supposed to move. Why not just let it flow and showcase its weightlessness? Maybe it would get in the way, but there are also ponytails and such, right?
Have a look at her hair. There's something odd about her hair. I know this is zero gravity and hair is supposed to stick out and go all over the place, but her hair doesn't really flop around naturally. It's always sticking out kind of rigidly. Maybe they permed it in that position, or perhaps they're hanging her upside down. As she shakes her head from side to side slightly, you can see the hair always springs back to a particular position with respect to her head. It should flop all over the place.
You look like you're in a studio, maybe in Omaha, Nebraska or something. The shot is so clear. Is this a hoax? Are you really in space still?
See the hair?
Okay, this is a good place to freeze for a moment and transition, because things go from questioning weird hair to deeper levels of strange.
I don't know, we're going to have to do something for you.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Watch this.
It looks like this guy is grabbing a wire attached to the guy next to him. He's not grabbing air, and there is no reason why any of these guys would be wearing wires in space. Someone I know wondered that when I showed them this video. Believe me, you're going to be just like the person I talked to, because you will look for answers. You will look for ways to rationalize these things that I show you. Just understand I've asked the same questions. Why, how, and what am I really seeing? This guy with the red shirt looks like his shirt is being pulled by a wire. There are lots of these instances out there that you can research. Not exclusive to the ISS. It also happened on the moon itself, and I'll show you that in a moment. But look at the guy in the middle of these men. He looks like he's actually wearing a harness. This was a live interview with Boise State, and look at how awkward this is. Look at this astronaut who turns with his back to us. Pay attention to his back heels. It seems like there may not be enough slack, so his heels stay off the ground. Okay, maybe that's hard for you to believe or see. But look at this awkwardness. This astronaut looks like he's being yanked up by a cable. So how does he get up like this on his own? I mean, the other astronaut did not pull him, but it looks like he was lifted by some external force outside of him, and it's not the guy next to him.
There's some sort of Geppetto character in the rafters above, pulling the astronauts by some sort of harness with fishing wire. Like, why does Charlie Duke want John Young to push on his head here?
Oops, here we go again. Give me a help. There you go. Okay, just start pushing on my head. Give me a hand. Okay, here we go.
So he pushes down on his head and his feet seem to levitate backwards.
I like to skip along, but me, boy, skip. Or whatever you call it. I can't get my left leg in front of me.
It was almost dangerous. You lose sight of the fact that it's a vacuum out there, and if you spring a leak next to it, you're going to be dead.
Uh-oh. Nice soft baby landing.
Straight up, it appears that these astronauts are attached to cables or some kind of harnesses at times, because it pulls the astronauts in unnatural ways. It even prevents them from falling all the way down. Sometimes they look like puppets on strings due to the way that they're being pulled or moved along. But how else could they be doing this?
This is another instance where you need to apply some common sense. By introducing a moon buggy, which had no scientific purpose, NASA was taking the unreasonable and reckless risk that one of its astronauts would get injured, jostled, cause a malfunction in one of the packs, or break down. How easy would it have been for an astronaut to hit a rock and cause a part of his suit to malfunction, or for the astronaut to get thrown from the vehicle? What if the vehicle broke down after hitting a rock covered in dust? This wasn't a minor risk, as is clearly seen in the photographs. The astronauts had poor visibility and were cruising around in conditions like these, where even the smallest problem could kill the astronaut. There's simply no way that the reckless lunar rover would have happened. What's even more funny about the lunar rover is the fact that it really looks like it was just a remote-controlled car with an action figure. Astronaut never moves from his uncomfortable position. But even more damning is the fact that many times the rover didn't produce tracks, or produce tracks in strange ways. Here is a sampling of photographs of the strange and missing rover tracks.
You see, the vibration of my voice box makes the air vibrate between us. Then when the air vibrates your eardrum, you hear what I'm saying. But maybe you've seen a demonstration of a bell under a glass jar. With normal air inside the jar, you could hear the bell clearly. But when the vacuum pump drew the air out of the jar, there was nothing inside to carry the vibrations of the bell. Nothing until the air was let back into the jar.
The sounds in space, it's odd to have a hammer or a metal tool and bang it against something and hear absolutely nothing. You can, sound won't travel in the vacuum, so there you are outside and you could be hitting something, no sound at all.
In space, since there's no atmosphere, there's no air, if you bang on something while you're doing your spacewalk, you will not be able to hear that.
And this leads us to the dilemma of our final segment. All modern astronauts, such as Piers Sellers and Mike Massimino, claim to hear absolutely nothing when they're out on the International Space Station in the vacuum, banging away with metal tools and objects, whereas during the Apollo missions, all kinds of sounds have been recorded that should not be possible if they are on the moon in the vacuum of space.
It was our pleasure to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July, but rather one that took place in the last decade. We all here and the people listening in today had the opportunity to share that adventure over its developing and unfolding in the past months and years. It's our privilege today to share with you some of the details of that final month of July that was certainly the highlight for the three of us of that decade.
This is the first big conference of the Apollo 11 astronauts, and it was only 2 days after the astronauts were released from quarantine. Their faces tell it all. They are not happy with what they are doing. They look like they were being forced to tell a lie, and they showed no excitement that would accompany 3 men who walked on the moon.
When you looked up at the sky, could you actually see the stars and the solar corona in spite of the glare?
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
I can't imagine that he was debriefed and that kind of question wasn't asked. What he saw, what he felt, what he experienced while on the moon. And now listen to Mike Collins, who was sitting to the left of Neil Armstrong.
I don't remember seeing any.
Neil, you were a little bit concerned, you said about...
So now Mike doesn't remember seeing any stars either. We have to remember that the reporter asked about them looking up at the sky and if they could see the stars based on the circumstances. So Mike Collins' answer has got to apply to his experience in the command module itself because he didn't walk on the moon or go down to its surface. But let's look again at Neil's response to what Mike said.
I don't remember seeing any.
Neil, you were a little bit concerned, you said about...
Notice his body language, and it looks like Neil even whispers something under his breath to Mike. Was he telling him to simply shut up? I don't know, but the interaction looks really odd to me.
You can see Armstrong was bothered by Collins' answer. Collins' answer is hilarious because Michael Collins was never on the surface and so he had no reason to answer the question. In addition, Michael Collins was the pilot of the command module, and he would have allegedly seen the most amazing show of stars on the dark side of the moon, better than any person that had lived up till that time. Michael Collins supposedly saw the dark side of the moon 27 times, and he doesn't remember seeing any stars.
All right, here is another interview with Neil Armstrong. And right after I show you this quick piece, I'll immediately share a few more statements made by other astronauts who shared what they could or couldn't see while in outer space.
Mr. Armstrong, I do realize that when you were on the moon, you had very little time for gazing upwards. But could you tell us something about what the sky actually looks like from the moon, the sun, the earth, the stars, if any, and so on?
The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon. The Earth is the only visible object other than the sun that can be seen, although there have been some reports of seeing planets. I myself did not see planets from the surface, but I suspect they might be visible.
From Mark Cameron. This is from Mark Cameron.
Whilst in space, have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
Yeah.
all
because
the
you can
time.
see. Because you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon.
Space, and you're on the sun side of the orbit. The sunlight washes out all the starlight, so you can't see any stars, just like here on Earth.
There's all the stars there, and the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
Yeah, you can, and there's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
You see the gas Magellan clouds of the
you
Milky Way
see
galaxy.
the Magellan.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
Then when you look out into deep space away from the sun, it's the darkest black you can imagine.
So this black space you're looking at on your screen right now could or couldn't be what you see when viewing outer space from outer space. I guess you have to go to outer space or walk on the moon to confirm this truth for yourself. There just seems to be so many questionable circumstances involving NASA. And yeah, this next one, I'm talking about the Space Shuttle Challenger of 1986 that exploded soon after takeoff. And please know that I'm taking this one carefully but seriously, because this one involves life and death. I just believe there are enough intriguing questions about the crew members on that exploding ship to touch on it here. Because 6 of the 7 crew members are considered alive by many people today, because there are 6 people living in the United States who closely resemble 6 original crew members from Challenger. The Challenger's commander was Francis Richard Scobie. Today there's a Richard Scobie who is CEO of a Chicago marketing company. These guys have some eerily similar features, like the same kind of wide-set eyes that both seem to be tilted in their corners. The pilot was Michael J. Smith, and there's another Michael J. Smith living today, a professor, and they seem to look the same. Same smiles, it looks like the same teeth inside those smiles, both have blue eyes, and more. One of the mission specialists was Ronald McNair. It turns out that he has a brother named Carl, who's living today, and they look like they could be twin brothers. Another mission specialist was Ellison Onizuka. He also has a lookalike brother still alive today, and his brother's name is Claude. Another mission specialist was Judith Resnick, and there's a Yale law professor with similar features and identical name living today. And then there was the teacher Sharon Krista McAuliffe. Well, there is a Syracuse professor named Sharon A. McAuliffe who looks a lot like the original crew member with the same first name and last name. Again, I do not take sharing this information lightly, because it is a serious thing when you question if people may have really died. So I don't know about this for sure. I just know that the odds seem pretty crazy that 6 of the 7 crew members have people living today with appropriately similar ages, nearly identical names, and strikingly similar features. Let's go back to the moon for a moment, because some have pointed out how there's no crater underneath the lunar module landing. The jet propulsion would have likely created a crater, or at least some type of big marking, from its landing. There isn't any dust anywhere though, not even on the legs or feet of the module. I would think that some kind of dust or rocks should have been blown around from the lunar module landing on the moon. Keep in mind that the module had a 10,000-pound thrust engine, except it seems to have left no disturbance underneath it.
This is a 7,500-pound thruster. Look at its power. Look at its heat. Look at the light it creates. Look at the dust it kicks up. And yes, the Apollo astronauts claim that its lunar lander also kicked up dust, and the phony footage shows the same. The Apollo lunar lander had a bigger thruster at 10,000 pounds. Obviously, the 10,000-pound thruster failed to displace or scorch any of the lunar soil. In one case, you can see the nozzle is actually bent as it collapsed on the surface. The nozzle is literally buried in the ground, and still it did not affect the lunar soil. But this gets even better. This is official NASA footage of the Apollo 15 and 17 ascent stages. Remember, the engine was never, even allegedly, turned on beforehand. In addition to the preposterous and obviously fake footage, NASA claims that it used a remote control to operate the camera on the moon buggy left behind, and then beamed that video footage back to Earth 234,000 miles away. We didn't even have decent television remote controls in 1972. But NASA could not only operate the camera from 234,000 miles, NASA could also pan up and follow the lunar ascent stage and zoom out all in real time without delay. Look again. The camera zooms out and pans up in real time, and this remote control was supposedly 234,000 miles away. That, ladies and gentlemen, is impossible.
From an analytical standpoint, photographic anomalies have to be sought out with an understanding of lighting and shadows. The most straightforward is simple. When objects are lit solely by the sun, as all the scenes on the moon were said to be, after all, lighting equipment was not only impractical, it was unnecessary in bright sunlight, then all shadows, regardless of the landscape, will run parallel with one another and never intersect, as shown by this example. In these seldom seen photographs, obtained from a rarely used auxiliary NASA archival site, it is clear that these scenes were lit with artificial light. These shadows, which are cast at different angles, are evidence that a second light source is being used. In addition, the sun would not cause an isolated hotspot like this, only an artificial light would. Again, intersecting shadows and another hotspot. And again. And again. It is simply impossible for this picture to have been taken with sunlight on the moon. Here, the shadows are shown to be as black as pitch. And yet here, completely in a shadow, the astronaut is lit up like a Christmas tree. How can this be? Or this, on the shadow side of the lunar module.
Our NASA actors were able to impossibly produce thousands of studio-quality photos. What's wrong about that? It is the fact that the astronauts did not have the ability to use the viewfinder to frame their shots, or to manually adjust aperture, focus, or shutter speed, and do so all without the benefit of secondary light sources. But the astronauts managed to do this nearly every time. This can't happen in real life. The problem for the astronauts is that the cameras were mounted to their chests, which made it impossible to see through the viewfinder to meter, frame, and focus the shots. Everything, therefore, was pretty much of a guess. Focusing would have been entirely guesswork, as would the framing of each shot. An experienced photographer could accurately estimate the exposure settings, but the astronauts lacked such experience, and they were also handicapped by the fact that they were viewing the scenes through heavily tinted visors, which meant that what they were seeing was not what the camera was seeing. To add to their troubles, they were wearing space helmets that seriously restricted their field of vision, along with the enormously bulky pressurized gloves that severely limited their manual dexterity. The odds then of getting even one of the three elements, exposure, focus, and framing, correct under those conditions on any given shot would have been exceedingly low. And yet, amazingly enough, on the overwhelming majority of the photos, they got all three right. The fact that NASA astronauts took 5,771 photos is another major issue as well. Here's how one commenter put it. NASA wants the world to believe that 5,771 photographs were taken in the combined time of 4,834 minutes over an alleged 6 missions. This equates to Apollo 11, 1 photo every 15 seconds, Apollo 12, 1 photo every 27 seconds, Apollo 14, 1 photo every 62 seconds, Apollo 15, 1 photo every 44 seconds, Apollo 16, 1 photo every 29 seconds, Apollo 17, 1 photo every 26 seconds. Given all the facts, was it possible for two men to take that many photos in so short a time? Any professional photographer will tell you it cannot be done. Virtually every photo was a different scene or in a different place, requiring travel. As much as 30 miles travel was required to reach some of the photo sites. Extra care had to be taken shooting some stereo pairs and panoramas. Each perfectly exposed and perfectly framed picture was taken on a chest-mounted camera without a viewfinder, using manual camera settings with no automatic metering, while wearing a bulky spacesuit and stiff, clumsy gloves. The agency wants the world to believe that 5,771 perfectly exposed and perfectly framed photographs were taken in 4,834 minutes. If nothing but photography had been done, such a feat is clearly impossible, made even more so by all the documented activities of the astronauts. Imagine 1.19 photos every minute that men were on the moon. That's one picture every 50 seconds. The secret NASA tried to hide has been discovered. The quantity of photos purporting to record the Apollo lunar EVAs could not have been taken on the moon in such an impossible time.
The element that seals their fate. Of all the footage of Apollo 11 requested from NASA over a 5-year period, one gem was discovered just before the completion of this documentary. An old reel received by mistake. It contains the raw or unedited footage of the crew of Apollo 11, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin Jr. and Neil Armstrong, staging part of their mission for nearly an hour in living color, with exceptionally clear behind-the-scenes audio of conversations discussing the techniques used to achieve a disingenuous picture depicting the Earth at a distance, in order to falsely demonstrate their far journey from it. Here they discuss that these television transmissions were in fact not broadcast live as everyone believed. They were first screened and edited for playback later.
Roger, Neil. We just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get to playback, we can sort of correlate what we were seeing. Thank you very much.
Here they discuss the fact that they have turned out the lights and have blocked out sunlight from entering the spacecraft through the other windows, as to not cause any reflected light to fall onto the spacecraft's wall in the foreground.
Okay, very good. Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number one window, and there isn't any reflected light. We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera.
This is where the astronaut is back in view, but the lens was supposed to be on the window. Is it legitimate? I don't know. There's just so many weird things about the Apollo missions when you research them. And again, I'm not vouching for a funny thing happen on the way to the moon, but it does address a few questions that seem to make sense, that seem to be worth asking.
Oh, this is a shot from 130,000 miles out. I guess it's from approaching. It's from approaching the moon, looking back at the Earth. If that's the Earth, is that like another spacecraft?
No. That I have no idea what that is. It's some aberration on the film of some sort. Oh, those are shadows, I think. Or reflections, probably reflections that are just reflecting.
Run that back again so we get another shot of it.
Okay, turn off the camera. Your interview is done. I've given you all the time I'm going to give you.
Okie dokie. Good to meet you.
I don't say it's a pleasure.
Understand.
Please get your ass out of my house.
Okay.
And you came here under false pretenses, and I think you're an asshole.
Lying about going to the moon is a satanic lie of gigantic proportions.
I don't hit people, but you're going to be on the deck unless you get...
I'm heading out. I appreciate it.
And get the hell out of my house. You'll get a gun and shoot them at them before they get out of the office?
We have a video camera running if you want to do it.
Right.
That would be great footage for us. See you later. In court, I hope. Want to call the CIA? Have them whacked? Where you put a transparency over the window and move the camera of the Earth and move the camera back away from the window. Turn off the lights in the spacecraft and appeared to be halfway to the moon when in fact they were in Earth orbit.
Huh, really?
Yeah, and they said it was the same way that you did it on Apollo 10. So we wanted to give you the opportunity to put your left hand on the Bible, to raise your right hand, to swear to God.
Stick it in your ear.
If you walked on the moon, we're giving the opportunity to swear to God that you walked on the moon.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to get the hell knocked out of you so you don't leave me alone.
We found a very unique reel of footage that we have queued up to show you.
Yeah.
And it's from the mission. And to our knowledge, no one has ever seen it before. And it's 30 years old.
And you want me to see this while you have me on camera?
Well, and to tell us what it is. That's correct. And you'll see this tape proves that.
Okay, well, I'm not interested in satisfying your suppositions when there's all this evidence that we did.
This proves, as you see, that you were using the window to demonstrate that you were halfway to the moon when you were
Turn the camera off, please. Turn the camera off. Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief. Did you see shooting stars? Did you see the shooting stars?
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
But there's a lot of noise going on. So I don't know the results of some of the experiments they've conducted. The point is they can't get that far from here, and they're really in the protective confines of the Earth.
One of the most common objections to the fake moon landings argument is that NASA has hundreds of supposed moon rocks. Of course, no one knows where these rocks are, and no one is allowed to actually independently investigate these moon rocks, but NASA itself destroyed this biggest proof of theirs when it gave one of its so-called moon rocks to a Dutch museum that actually analyzed the rock. As it turns out, the Dutch were given a glorious piece of petrified wood that most certainly didn't come from the moon. When one rock is proven fake, then we, the people, must rightfully assume that the rest of these alleged rocks are also fake. Building on the fact that you can see the 1960s movie backdrops repeatedly during the Apollo missions, we run into another problem. NASA reused same backdrops for different locations. Here's a good example. Another point that isn't discussed much, but I think it is a real issue for anyone who has been on a 12-hour flight. You know what I'm talking about. It is the human impossibility of sitting in a confined space for 12 days straight. Astronaut Ronald Evans on Apollo 17 supposedly sat like this for 12 days and 13 hours. I don't think that's humanly possible, and no one discussed this extreme torture.
One of the main defenses that people make to show or argue that we had to have gone to the moon, and they often say that there would have been so many people involved in the conspiracy it would have been impossible to keep it quiet. The only people who would have known about the hoax would have been those on a need-to-know basis, and that would have been very few people. You have your astronauts, you have the people filming everything and building the locations, and you have the people authorizing it, and that's it. Everybody else would have been doing their one task in the line and sequence of events that they were responsible for. And this segues into another defense made by people who believe we went to the moon, and that is, why didn't NASA have them do things over after they made mistakes? And the reason for that is that this was live, and not everybody was in on it. And those hundreds of people you see at Mission Control, they're not in on it. You got the surgeons, they're monitoring the heart rate. You have the data guys, they're monitoring whatever is coming in on their feed. And everybody is looking at a live event, and all over the world, people are monitoring a live event. So there were no do-overs.
So everything I've shared so far, to me it's really bizarre and odd. Much of it doesn't add up, if you ask me. But still, many of you will find explanations. There's a lot of info out there. But based on what my eyes have seen, based on using my own personal logic, even if I wanted to eliminate half of the things I just showed you as untrue, I simply can't explain away the other half as untrue, because there is too much that just doesn't make sense in my head.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
To me, Buzz is flat out saying that we didn't go. Buzz, why haven't we gone back to the moon?
Because we didn't go there. We didn't go there. We didn't go there. And that's the way it happened.
Now, this isn't just some sudden realization. This isn't the evidence. Though I'm glad that Buzz came clean, there is much more information available to show us that outer space is not what we are led to believe.
People cling so tenaciously, often even angrily, to what is essentially a tremendous fraud on the world. What primarily motivates them is fear, but it is not the lie itself that scares people. It is what the lie says about the world around us and how it really functions. For if NASA was able to pull off such an outrageous hoax before the entire world and then keep that lie in place for 4 decades, what does that say about the control of the information we receive? What does that say about the media and the scientific community and the educational community and all the other institutions we depend on to tell us the truth? What does that say about the very nature of the world we live in? This is what scares the hell out of people and prevents them from even considering the possibility that they could have been so thoroughly duped. It's not being lied to about the moon landings that people have a problem with. It is the realization that comes with that revelation. If they could lie about that, they could lie about anything.
Houston, we have a problem.
You. Look at your eyes. Look at them. Speckled, colorful, each one unique. And I created every one of them. I gave you your personality. I made you pure, complex. And every day, I give you life. I love you. But something happened. You cheated on me. You didn't trust me. You sinned. You cut yourself off from me. And although you're still alive, you were slowly dying. So you looked for other things. To fill the void. But nothing works. It just kills you faster. And it separates us more and more. What are you searching for? I don't want you to die. I created you, not to be destroyed, but to know me. So I became one of you, a fragile creation. I was tempted, but I never sinned. I came to save you. You have so many sins. And they have a cost. Someone has to die. You or me. So I took on your sin and traded in my life for yours. And I died in your place. Because I love you. Then from the dead. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am Jesus. I'm not here to condemn you, came to bring you back to life. Rely on me. I will forgive you and give you eternal life. I love you. And I did all of this to have a relationship with you.